And what we thought we would do today, just keeping in mind that we've been working on this museum project now for several years, and some of you may have seen early stages of the designs, may be familiar with the project. We thought we would go through the design in its latest form, but then we're going to really take a deep dive into one of the parts of the project that we're most excited about, and that's the mass timber construction. So we're going to stand and talk as we go through the slides so we can see what's up on the screen for you all, but then we'll sit down and have a discussion with all of you. So we thought it'd be useful to kind of explain our roles. As the director of the museum, I'm responsible for the educational mission, the exhibition program, the teaching program, the community of staff, the way that we reach out to the public. And this vision is actually the driving force behind every single detail of the design. So the way that the teaching museum sort of drives this form is going to be key, and you're going to hear it throughout.
And as the museum project director, I come with a background in exhibition and collections work at the Amon Carter, also a massive renovation project at that museum, and project management across public art. And my role here I see largely as one embedded in the project team of the architects and the construction managers and our whole team of project managers as a point person and liaison between that project team and the museum team. So I'm in all of the project meetings, coordinating very closely with Pam, but keeping an eye out for the museum standards as they are implemented through the design, and thinking with Pam through the future operations of the museum and how those decisions are impacted in the design planning, and then just looking forward throughout construction on keeping my eye on those moments when the museum staff needs to be brought in and consulted along the way during the project planning.
So I think you'll hear our perspectives as we talk through the slides. We also wanted to introduce in absentia the design team Soil. It's a Brooklyn-based architecture firm, 22 people on staff. It's a very international firm led by Florian Eidenberg and Jing Liu. They founded the firm in 2008 and with a real commitment to education, the arts, and future forms of architecture. And one of the things that's really important to their practice is sustainability, which is really important to Williams and really important to WCMA. So we are actually speaking from the user point of view, from the client point of view, but we've learned an enormous amount from working with Soil and continue to learn an enormous amount. And this whole project, as I say, has been very collaborative. It's been very discussion-based, and that will, I think, come through, and I think we wanted to kind of embody that in this presentation. So just to kind of start, I thought I would, since as I say, the design really follows the program, and I know some of you will be familiar with this firsthand and also from perhaps talking to me or any of my colleagues from the museum, but I just wanted to start with a really quick snapshot of the program. WCMA is a teaching museum through and through. Faculty from departments all across campus teach with the collection. So it's a truly cross-disciplinary space where art catalyzes what's possible to learn the kinds of questions that are asked. If any of you came to Mini Reunion last year, I was on this stage in conversation with Dan Barrowy from Computer Science. And that is the kind of conversation that we're all involved with on a daily basis. That said, we still have as our primary partner the art department, and all of the different courses in studio art and history of art teach with the collection any given semester. This is grad art as well as undergrad. So it's an incredibly active teaching program, perhaps most exemplified in one gallery in our current space, which is dedicated to Object Lab, a selection of collection in conjunction with the syllabi of different courses, where the faculty really sort of amplify what they're achieving in their courses through the installations of the collection works that they install. And that's also open to the public and available for everybody. A couple of really loved signature programs at the museum. Walls is a program that's now 10 years old, Williams Art Loan for Living Spaces. The students line up each semester and borrow a work of art to install in their dorm room. And from this, they get an incredible experience of the joys of living with art and how the relationship to the art changes when you live with it day in and day out. We also have a course that's cross-listed between art history and economics, where the students learn how to acquire works of art for the museum collection. It's been taught several times now. We've acquired nearly 20 works for the collection, thanks to the students' research and analysis and presentation. And then, of course, Williams is very well known for its arts leadership role in the museum world. So many museum directors have come through Williams College and have gone on to change the world of what's possible in museums. And that continues to this day. We have academic year interns, summer interns. We make use of the whole arts ecosystem. And the way that these students are kind of helping us look into the future means that it's a two-way learning street. So we're really dedicated to continuing that tradition of arts leadership. By the way, WCMA is approaching its 100th birthday. So we have 100 years of long, strong, really solid history to build on, and we have the kind of privilege and joy of looking forward to the next century. So this is the view of the design of the future museum from the south. And it's, as Ryan was saying, right across from the Rotary as you come into town and come into campus, greeting you with this kind of really interesting facade that says creativity is important, art is important. It is an expansive ground floor experience. The roof is really defining. The roof is very specifically developed to kind of resonate with the landscape. And sit in a very harmonious way with the natural surrounds. And a key part of this concept for the design is the interaction and the inseparability of art and nature and human experience. The roof is very sculptural. It changes depending what view you're approaching it from. Here from the southeast, you can see that it looks quite different than it did from the direct south. Very inviting. The path sort of draws you into the museum. One of the goals of the museum and the design is that it be very welcoming. And here's just a map to show you where the structure is in relationship to campus. So here's the roundabout. The gray shape is the museum, the future museum, and then you see the layout of campus. Zooming in a bit, you can see on the site the building in relationship to the landscape design. The sort of gold areas are flowering meadows. The pink and purple areas are gardens. The dark green around the edge is the reforested edge. And you can see how the building sits forward on the site and really entices you to come in and see what's going on inside. And then zooming in a bit more, the floor plan really gives you a sense of how the educational mission and the teaching program are defining for this structure. So the whole kind of east side of the building is dedicated to classrooms, study center, research opportunities, object lab, which is the gallery classroom that I mentioned before, in an expanded space. We currently have one teaching classroom. We'll have 4, plus a research space. The object lab space will be bigger. And then we have really wonderful galleries that will allow us to show about twice as much of the art. And not to be missed, cafe and auditorium really amplify what's possible in the kind of community and gathering aspects of this building. It's all organized around a central lobby, which we'll talk more about, with a courtyard that brings light and green right into the museum.
And some of the, what this dotted yellow line is depicting are the views from the inside out. So throughout the building, you're experiencing the art and the architecture with always a view out to the outdoors or drawing you in towards the courtyard garden, and see the viewing gardens around. So as we advance through some of the design slides, you'll pick up those moments of experience in the museum where that inside-outside connection is felt.
And as we say, the kind of main floor, this expansive ground floor experience, is the main kind of public and educational program of the museum. But on the upper level, on a smaller footprint, there's a collaborative workspace that I think you will see some images of to come, but it gives you a sense of kind of where the behind-the-scenes work is happening. And similarly, on the lower level, there's a lot of great space for art storage and art preparation, research, direct access to the collection. And I will say that this is a real add for our teaching program. So many, as I say, arts leaders come through Williams and work at WCMA, but thus far we really haven't had ample behind-the-scenes space to teach the kind of best practices of art storage, condition checking, preparation for exhibitions, direct research of original works of art, simply because of the facility. So with this new building, we're really expanding what's possible in terms of what we can teach students about best practices for museums and collections care and research.
And also notable on this slide, the collections work and storage and teaching is occurring in the areas that are in blue and green. And what purple indicates are all of the mechanical support areas. And this has been designed so that our facilities team can access the mechanical spaces independently of the art spaces, which at Lawrence Hall today isn't quite possible. There are a lot of instances where intense coordination has to happen for normal maintenance to occur. And so this building has been designed to account for that challenge.
It also gives you a sense of just how mechanically specific museums are when you look at how much of the space is dedicated to those purple mechanical HVAC type systems. So the porch is actually a really important element of this design. We're zooming in as if you're walking up to the building now. You can see that there's a deep overhang and it's very welcoming. It protects you from the weather, gives shade, actually helps us modulate the temperature and conditions inside the building, and accounts for some energy savings. So the porch really embodies two of the primary goals of this new structure for WCMA. The kind of welcoming, inclusive feel, and its sustainability. The other thing that we'll talk more about as we move forward is that this is the first place where you really start to see, this image is the first place where you really start to see, and it will be the same when you walk up, the mass timber structure. And just to zoom in on the south entrance for a minute, I am really excited that with this new museum building, there will be no mistaking where the front door is. It will always be able, you'll always be able to find your way in. You're drawn in by light and green, and there's a lift above the door. So this is the south entrance, the pedestrian entrance. There's also a west entrance that's equally welcoming for people who are coming by car. This is the west entrance. The other thing we could say about this is that we wanted to show the building at different times of day, and we really insisted with Soil and the whole design team that they think seasonally and recognize that this is a 4-season climate. So, oftentimes it gets dark, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we wanted a soft, welcoming glow of light inside, not a glaring presence, but a kind of magnet to draw you in. So this just gives you a sense of the effect we're going to. In front, there's a cafe, as I said in the floor plan. That's a huge add, and I think it's really going to be a big draw. And this is the lobby. So whether you come in through the west entrance or the south entrance, the lobby, everybody comes into the same lobby. And the wood ceiling that you see here is the structure of the building. So I think, thinking about how this building is teachable, it's a teachable moment, it's a teachable experience. We're actually letting the mass timber and the structure be seen, in this most kind of entry experience that the museum offers. This is the courtyard that we have been referring to as at the center of the design. It just gives you a little bit more close-up view. Again, that indoor-outdoor relationship. And of course, we have galleries in the museum. I'm so delighted with how the galleries are shaping up. There are oftentimes little snippets of exterior views, like you see here, a view into the courtyard. And then there's other places where we have more kind of light-filled spaces for the art that is not as light sensitive. The other things I love about the gallery spaces are the herringbone wood floors and the wood acoustic panel ceilings. Both of those resonate with the mass timber structure. they're organized, the galleries are organized, there's 11 galleries, and they're organized so that the sight lines are really enticing, and art can draw you through from one space to the next. And this is one of those light-filled galleries that I mentioned. So 2 of the galleries have skylights. They'll be great for showing sculpture, other light-resistant, light-hardy work. And then they both have, the 2 skylight galleries have floor-to-ceiling, north-facing windows. And one of the things, there were very few things we heard from patrons of the former Williams Inn that they missed. But one of the things that people have said that they missed were the north views from the upper floors. And so we wanted to really make a nod to that north view. And this is actually a space dedicated to the north view gallery, where in the, in these galleries that are more unconventional, the main view actually becomes nature. Cafe will be a great source of food and drink, but also community. And the study center is really the heart and soul of the museum. It's all organized around a lobby, so another one of these informal spaces where you can settle in and study or talk to a friend. And then circling this lobby, which looks right out to the south, there are the classrooms and the research center that I mentioned before. This is just an example of one of the classrooms. Our one object study classroom in Lawrence Hall is completely booked, and it is really in demand, and much more than we can keep up with our one space, so we're really looking forward to having more teaching spaces. And then I just wanted to highlight that in the lower level, even in the lower level, which is mostly below ground, we're using the topography, which actually goes down 30 feet from front to back to create this lower level. The architects have been super attentive to creating opportunities for natural light and thinking about the well-being of all the people who are in these spaces. And then these are the upper level workspaces that I mentioned in the floor plan view and promised that we'd see another view of. And I think this is really where we dive into the kind of mass timber aesthetic and functionality that we wanted to kind of share a bit more about today.
Yeah, I think carrying the mass timber expressed in the lobby spaces that you saw in the ceilings and the beam structures all the way up to the workspace floor starts to give a picture of how it's incorporated throughout the building environment, and as an opportunity to continue learning and teaching about this sustainable structural system. And so we return to the lobby here just to turn a little bit more focus to mass timber as a building material, and to talk about how our architect Soil, along with the architect of record Perry Dean Rogers, and our structural engineers who are Fast and Epp, have evaluated the mass timber as a primary building material, and to talk about the engineering process and manufacturing, and then how we envision the installation occurring on site. And this is a really exciting not only beginning of the project, but an important milestone that we'll reach in the construction next summer. And this is the first opportunity that Pam and I have to present this material. So we think that we're going to be talking a lot more about this in the future year, and we're very happy for this opportunity to share it with you.
And we look forward to your questions.
Yes. So the college's ambitious sustainability goals were set out at the very beginning of this project and included a 20% reduction in embodied carbon, and that very advanced sustainability goal that is part of the International Living Futures Institute's Living Building Challenge Core 4 certification, which is the sustainability certification we're aiming for. This really sets the stage for the architects to start questioning how are we going to meet that goal. And they recognize that mass timber is one of the most important decisions that they could make at that early stage. And I think also coupled with the selection committee evaluating architects also being excited by this potential. And I think Pam.
Yeah, we had an incredible selection committee when we were deciding which architect to invite to design this building for Williams. And it included one of our colleagues, Michael Lewis, who's an incredible historian of architecture and is also the critic for the Wall Street Journal. I'm sure you all know his work. And he's just been a fabulous partner throughout the entire project. And at that very early stage, he sort of stood up when we were thinking about what we cared about, when we were looking for architects and thinking about what type of architect we'd like. He stood up and he said, don't gasp, don't kick me off the island, but what about wood? And this is the climate of wood. And from there, we kind of started weaving together the idea of the aesthetics of wood and the look and feel and the quality with the incredibly rigorous sustainability goals that the college had laid out that were in the RFP that all architects received. And so then when we got to the stage of interviewing finalists, Soil actually said, well, looking at the college's sustainability goals, it seems that mass timber is going to be the way to go, and here's how we've been thinking about the future of construction in mass timber, and here's why we'd be excited to pursue that in this project. So it all kind of came together in a beautiful way, but it's equally about the look and feel, the aesthetics and the meaning, and the sustainability goals.
And simultaneous to that time, building codes in the United States are starting to follow international codes. They're more and more encouraging of this building technology. So it includes the masses code changed from 9 to 10 just occurred, which is great timing for us because it's very encouraging for our project to be able to be on the forefront of the National Building Code adapting to allow and further encourage mass timber. And in terms of, this slide didn't show up, but in terms of how mass timber compares to steel and concrete in greenhouse gas emissions, a mass timber structure compared to steel is steel is 2.4 times the greenhouse gas emissions in its production, and concrete is just above that at 2.6 times that of, here we go, excuse me. So concrete is 2.6 times the CO2 emissions of timber. And when you look at the total makeup of building materials in the construction industry as a whole, you can see it makes up 11% of global CO2 emissions. So our goal to reduce, the college's goal to reduce 20% of embodied carbon in construction projects really starts to chip away at and make an impact in this area. So, and starting to evaluate our choice of timber and the manufacturers and our partners going forward, we really start, the Soil especially starts by evaluating what qualities they want to see in the wood that's selected. And so the aesthetic qualities and properties that we want to share and make visible in the building actually lead us towards the species and the manufacturer and the forests that that we're going to be working with. So we've selected the spruce pine fir after evaluating these different options, which is got a less busy grain and a more even color quality to it. And this is a mix of species with the primary source being black spruce from northern Quebec. And then starts our investigation of working with Nordique, who is a company out of northern Canada.
I think the architects really are great listeners, and they were a perfect choice for us because there's such a thoughtful approach to everything, including building projects at Williams. So it was a real dialogue. But some of this wood, we talked about being too yellow. Some was kind of too white and icy. Some was too busy. And then, as Devon was saying, the kind of spruce pine fir was a little bit more subtle, and it seemed to just hit all the marks that we were trying to achieve in terms of look and feel.
And that choice of timber being a primary building material then leads to the investigation of what are the other primary building materials. So looking at, as an example, the material palettes for the gathering spaces, those view galleries in the lobby, being curtain wall and masonry and stone flooring, other wood treatments, wood acoustic panels to control acoustics in different spaces, as well as the parquet flooring. So that wood choice starts to inform a lot of the other decisions that are being made.
And these images are all comparative examples that we studied along the way with the tutorial benefit of faculty colleagues and the design team. So then when we looked at, choosing the material palette for the building as a whole, we had samples of masonry and wood flooring and even the aluminum tiles of the roof that we could look at side by side with the sample of the spruce pine fir wood. But it all kind of continued to evolve as we have been able to see things together in larger scale.
Yeah, and then just a view of how those are coming together in the building renderings. We're going back and looking at samples, seeing how they work together in rendering form, but then we're also building a mock-up, and the mock-up some of you might have seen being built near the police station up 7. And I'll show some images of it in construction right now, but there's it's been a really ongoing collaborative process identifying and selecting the final materials. So after the species selection, we'll discuss the layout design and how Nordique, as a design assist partner, has been working closely with soil and PDR very early in the project. So we right now are almost complete with design. In about 4 weeks, we'll have 100% construction drawings. But we have been working with Nordique since November of 2003. So almost a year, we've already been working with them to inform the design process. And this includes visits to their factory where the Chantiers Chibougamau is the original lumber factory in Chibougamau, Quebec. And in 2011, they expanded their facility to move their lumber industry into the engineered wood and mass timber fabrication. So we started working with them very early, have worked with them through the process of building a mock-up. That mock-up also has been an opportunity not just to evaluate materials, but to test out some of the connection methods of the wood products and the construction tolerances that we're designing for.
I mean, it was really important for me to know that they've been working in this mode since 2011 because they're, the top experts in this field. And Devon sort of glossed over this field trip to their plant, which includes a forest and a manufacturing plant and all the engineers and the kind of, they are just top of field in this. And I think you had to take like a tiny plane.
Yeah, I've got a picture of the plane to show. Yeah, so another benefit to working closely with them up front was because, as I said, the mass timber productions being more available to people through building codes and just a more popular building technology. So we had to get in line with them. If we had contracted with them too late, it would have impacted our construction schedule. So it really benefited us to get in line. This is just an example. I love these really detailed drawings that show the lower level of the museum and the concrete foundation and the basement essentially, and then built on top of that concrete below grade is the mass timber structure and just all of the precise design work that's going into planning out the timber. This is just an example of where the engineering and the architectural expression of the lobby spaces is just becoming more and more dynamic through technology and engineering understanding. So through our model, and if you picture the very expressive roof structure, the architects want to not create a one-to-one relationship of the roof form to the interior, but want you to feel this expansive sculptural experience. So they're looking at how they can kind of translate some of that sculptural quality inside. and then like overlaying the beams of the structure on that sculptural form, and seeing that these beams are referred to as glue lamb beams, and then on top of them are a CLT panel structure that's a cross-laminated timber panel structure. And so we start looking at this CLT panel that's spanning the beams and it needing to bend to kind of start to create the sculptural form in the ceiling. And these are just engineered diagrams that ask how much bend and flexibility can this panel have. And on the right, you see just an example of a mock-up that I'll show.
So, I mean, just to be crystal clear, the last few slides are not representative colors of what the museum will be, but by using those very heightened colors, we could really get a very precise sense of the subtle gradations in the curve of that we're asking the wood to reach.
Yes, technical models, yeah. And then after the layout design comes the manufacturing, and that's where our trip to Shibugamu comes in. So in the right, we see a small selection of our team of soil, PDR, myself, our project managers with Skanska, and our construction managers with Consigli met in Montreal, and then took this 10 or 12 seat plane to their factory. And so this was a new, really exciting experience for me and for us to, as a team building activity, to land on an icy runway. So really this is a very large factory that is in the middle of this forest that's been sustainably harvested for a long time. We got a complete tour of the factory, from the bringing in of logs and cutting them down, stripping them of bark, scanning. There's a scanning technology that sorts the tree logs to the saw that will break them into, maybe it's 1 2x4, or maybe this log can be 4 2x4s, and so it's sorting them through different saws in this giant factory, which again has been in operation for a long time, and then moves into the mass timber manufacturing process with being laminated together. So they're taking all of these trees into 2x4s and then laminating those together into structural materials. And in the center, this large bag is basically like just a big bag of glue that they're using to laminate all of the 2x4s together. And about interesting to me is that about half of their 2x4 product just goes into regular consumer chains, and then about half of it goes back into their mass timber factory to be produced in this way. They're using very precise CNC methods for creating the attachment points. So in the center, you see this area that's routed out to accept the steel connecting forms that's bringing the beams together. And then on the right, factory applied sealer. So they are finishing the products there in the factory as well. So another aspect of our trip was to view this mock-up that they created to test out this lobby ceiling structure. And they constructed a series of simulating 4 of the beams with 3 of the CLT panels to test to really validate their engineering assumptions about the flexibility of this cross-laminated timber. And I think that's, the video of it being just very carefully relaxing under its own weight in the factory with our engineers from Fasten Up there to take measurements. And so it's been a really great partnership and a great example of our confidence in the architecture and engineering being able to work with this company as early as we have. So then just leading through some of the aspects of installation, We see that these panels are all made in the factory to our specifications and become basically a kit that is assembled on site, loaded up in their factory onto truck beds. And this is what we're looking forward to this milestone moment in the summer next year when, dozens and dozens of trucks are arriving with our structure and cranes are being able to put all of these materials together on site. So it's, after the precise manufacturing of this work, a very seamless installation process.
Can I just say, for the last, year or so, people have been saying, when does construction start? And in fact, a lot of off-site construction has been not only being studied, but underway, so that when it comes together, it'll be a really efficient process of pulling the pieces together into the structure.
Yeah, and this is an example of how consigli, our construction managers, are also able to use this pre-planning to look in advance to the structural installation and are starting to sequence early in this stage how they're accepting the materials and what the sequence is of installing them. So it's pretty incredible. We're not really quite through with the design, but yet we know so much and we have so much planned and underway. So, yeah, and then we just end here with these images that show this, again, the interior and exterior relationship that this mass timber expression is bringing to the museum, and how happy we are to have this as a learning opportunity as part of the project and to be able to share it with you and for people over the next year.
For sure, and then with students and all of our communities forever after. I think the idea that every single corner of this building, every single detail, every single material is a learning experience, a learning opportunity, is core to the concept. And I think will continue to be revelatory for all of us as we move forward.
Yeah, so we've spoken for about 45 minutes, and we'll have a seat and answer questions, and I'll take this in case I need to flip back to any slides.
So we're really eager to hear any questions that you may have.
I do have a loud voice. I notice on the roof there are no solar panels. Is the solar included in the tiles, or is there not solar? What is the status of that?
There's not solar in this building because the roof form, the sculptural roof form, wouldn't allow it in the end. We did study tiles with solar incorporated, but the technology wasn't advanced enough yet, and the kind of cost-benefit analysis of using actual solar tiles for that sculptural roof ended up not being the priority.
Yeah, and we also investigated geothermal, and we tested 2 wells on the property that unfortunately were not viable, and the college is continuing to investigate different sites around campus for geothermal. What we are planning for in terms of solar in the future is that the museum is net zero ready, so we can plug in to other solar sources on campus. And working with ILFI, there's a agreement for the campus to be able to capitalize on that certification with them by sharing solar as it develops more around campus.
So might you do a solar farm somewhere else and sort
Plug
of bring
in.
that in?
Correct. So we're going all electric and all air source heat pumps at this time, but in the future we can plug into solar.
Could I ask 2 more quick questions? One, flexibility in interior design seemed to be really important in designing the Science Center. When I was I had some opportunities to observe that. Is there flexibility in this design for moving walls and capturing future needs if the needs as envisioned today don't pan out over 20 years or longer?
Yeah, such an important question, and one that we've been thinking about a lot. And we've had the benefit of living as a museum in Lawrence Hall that was never purpose-built as a museum over the last 100 years, and looking at just really experiencing how important flexibility is. And so I think you can see from the plan, the way that the sort of pavilion structures under the single roof are organized allows for the purposes that we imagine putting them to immediately, but they can also sort of morph and change for the needs that arise. And some of the things we've been really thinking a lot about is performance is more and more present in museums everywhere. For us, in this incredibly arts-rich college, the collaborations with dance and music and theater are as invigorating to the program as any of our written research is, and so we want to be sure that the floors are friendly to dancers, and we're building in flexibility for all of that potential that we're starting to see and that we know is just going to grow.
Perfect, thank you. Last question. In using these mass timber and the like wood products, I come from a consumer products company, and one of the things that we do is test it in a way that accelerates the efficiency and what the product will do over time so that we're sure it will last for a long period of time. You seem to have tested the mass timber and the wood products beautifully and that they work well for your current purposes. Is there any way to do this form of acceleration so that you'll see how it will perform in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, that kind of thing? And with that, I'll yield the mic.
I'm not aware of that evaluation myself, but I know that Nordique and Fast Enough, the structural engineers, are leaders in this field, and I would imagine that they have, yes, yeah. And we look forward to having that mock-up on which we purposefully built off-site so that we could, it wasn't in the way of construction on the site, and it could like stay for 2 or 3 years. Obviously, that's not the duration of time that you're referring to, but yeah, that's a good question to prepare for next time.
It's a great question, and we have also thought about how we can accelerate some of those weather conditions and aging conditions to see. Of course, it's not going to be exact, and it's not the same span of time, but yeah, it's great.
Just a comment on that last question. I'm an architect and arrived here 59 years ago, and the Lansing Chapman hockey rink was a glulam wood product, and there's been a tremendous amount of research done and all kinds of testing on the adhesives that hold the wood together. So that has always been perceived of, I think, correctly as the area of greatest concern with long-term viability. So I feel good about mass timber construction long-term. My wife and I also live in a mass timber house, happens to be Douglas fir. I've been happy with the design, looking at the building. I'm curious if you'd talk a little bit more about the architect selection process you went through. Soil is a firm I'm not familiar with, but I like the design. I've known a number of architects through my career that have done wonderful buildings, and I'm curious what you were looking for kind of as the spirit of the place when you had no preconception of who you were going to be working with.
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks also for your knowledgeable comments on the advances in glulam and CLT. That was obviously questions that we've been asking all along, so it's great to hear your perspective on that. So the architect selection process was really fun. We had a group of about 12 people on the selection committee, and one of our first tasks was to scour the directories of architecture firms, particularly those who had worked on museum projects and in the arts. And so we invited a large number of firms to submit their qualifications portfolios. And I think we got about 40 of those. And then reading through those 40 qualification packages, we narrowed down to 12 firms to request proposals from. It wasn't a competition. Williams doesn't typically do competitions. I understand there was a competition about 100 years ago, but generally it's not a competition. And there's a really important reason for that. That's because if you go through a competition process, as you well know as an architect, the concept gets pretty solidified by the time you start the project. And so you're kind of hiring for a specific architectural concept, a design concept. And we had a lot of input. We'd done a really robust programming study. So while we didn't know what this building would look like, we knew what space needs we had for the teaching program. We knew what our values were, that we were aspiring to be incredibly warm and welcoming, inclusive, to be incredibly sustainable. We had our aspirations really clearly spelled out. So those were sort of the criteria that we were looking when we narrowed down to the 12 finalists. And then ultimately we narrowed down to 4 firms that we interviewed. And at that point we were, again, looking for their arts projects, their education projects, museum projects if they had one. Soil was actually the only firm that had a standalone academic museum, a museum in a university or college context of all the firms we looked at. That's at University of California, Davis. And then the other things, like the kind of soft skills that we were listening for, were how collaborative, how much they wanted to participate in a truly consultative process, because this has been that, and it's much better for it. We've had students involved throughout the entire process. Our faculty partners have been involved. There's a building committee. There's a design review committee. It sounds like a lot of voices, a lot of committees, and it is, but it's really made, in this instance, it's really made a better project because the kind of investment in the success of this museum is so deeply held at this college.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One relates to Object Lab. How much bigger is the new Object Lab compared to the existing one? How much capacity? Second question relates to plans for outdoor sculpture.
Yeah, that's great. So the new Object Lab is about 25% bigger than the current Object Lab, but that is a little bit misleading because it's actually much more flexible. So it will have the capacity, and this is true of the museum as a whole, to show about twice as much art as we're currently able to show. So everything about this project is about the accessibility of the collection, showing as much art in as many kind of intellectual and community contexts as we can. So Object Lab will allow, right now we can typically have about 8 courses per semester, and we'll be able to have more courses and more kind of flexible approaches to the courses because the space is more flexible, and it will have temporary wall capacity and so forth. So it's not quite as defined as our current spaces are. And then your question about outdoor sculpture is a really timely one. We mentioned the courtyard at several points, and one of the most important points about the courtyard, in addition to bringing light and green into the heart of the building, is it's one of the major opportunities to see art as soon as you go through the front door. So it's right on sightline, either from the south or the west entrance. So we were planning to have sculpture in the courtyard, and then we've identified about 7 other potential sites on the grounds of the museum that would lend themselves to outdoor sculpture. I'm not saying we're going to have 7 pieces scattered through the site, but we have 7 sites, and then we have a list of more than 7 artists whose work we're really interested in, and we're doing a process of kind of curating and matchmaking across those sites and those artists. I can say that there are 2 works in the collection already that were both gifts to the collection in anticipation of this new building. One is by a really wonderful tree sculpture by Rona Pondick, and another is a really a stunning sculpture by Mark de Souvero. And so those are part of the package as we're looking for what sculpture will be on site, but we're also very much hoping to have some new additions to the outdoor sculpture collection for this site.
I'm interested in the scale of the project as far as the percentage of the collection that can currently be exhibited at Lawrence, and how will that be impacted, that percentage, in terms of the new museum? And the second question is there a plan for Lawrence?
So I'll take the first part, and then Devon will take the second part. So we're very lucky at WCMA that our collection is really diverse. It spans history, it spans the globe, and along with that comes very different size work. So the percentage question is a little hard to answer, because in some cases there might be a very large work that still counts as one piece. So it's not exactly percentage, but I do, and the more progress we make on planning for the installations, I do anticipate that we'll be able to show about twice as much work installed in the new museum. But more important, and more to your point, I think, is that with 4 classrooms and a research center, we will be able to make the collection as a whole so much more accessible, so that, when you are teaching a class and you want to bring works from the collection into the class session for the class discussion, there may be 6 or 8 or 10 works that come out for each class session or more, and that's a kind of constant rotation of the collection. And right now we do that, but we do it in one classroom, and we have demand for many more class sessions than we're able to accommodate. So I think it's both and. About twice as much of the collection will be able to, twice as much art will be able to be shown, and there's going to be a much more active teaching rotation because we'll simply have the space available. And then finally, one thing that we're studying now that I'm really excited about is how accessible the kind of study spaces around art storage can be, and how much more we can engage our students, especially the interns, in deep work with the collection. And we're starting that actually now as we're studying the collection in preparation for the eventual installation. So this project is very much about making the collection more accessible.
Yeah, in terms of the future of Lawrence Hall, Pam mentioned a study that occurred before the architect selection process that identified the needs of the new museum, and at that time it also, that study in 2020, 2021 outlined a potential future of Lawrence Hall as an interdisciplinary art center where art history offices and classrooms would continue to be in Lawrence Hall, but that the spaces that the museum occupied could become maker spaces for students across the arts around campus and become a creative hub. And another really exciting part of the study that we are about to undertake is looking at a lot of the different maker spaces across campus, all of the different shops, the technology lab at the library, a lot of resources that are scattered around campus, but is there a way that we can consolidate some of those resources and make them more available and more accessible to students? So Lawrence Hall, we know, also needs a lot of mechanical help, and it will not be renovated to meet the needs of a museum environment, but it can still serve the arts in some way. And so that is a study that we're just now beginning to undertake.
The only thing I would also add to that is that the art history branch of the art department will stay in Lawrence Hall, and will get a much deserved, long overdue kind of update to their spaces, so the office spaces and the classrooms. And that'll be a kind of happy anchor tenant in the building too.
Yeah, and one more note about the student use is a question and need that's been identified through interviewing students recently, in the past several years, is the need for extracurricular creative work spaces, so that students who are not enrolled in a dance class have a location to perform that's not, within their dorm common space. Or if you envision, an art student who's creating studio work but is working next to a theater performance group, and there's some synergy that can happen there by that co-location. So that's the kind of hub activity and extracurricular use that's been identified as something the students have been requesting for a few years.
I have a question about loading of the roof. I came in a little bit late, so maybe I missed something, but we're undergoing climate change, and there's a lot less snow on campus in winters now than there was 70 years ago when I was here. And I wonder if they needed to take into consideration the weight of snow, or if they just didn't and figured it wouldn't be an issue.
Yes, I don't have a slide of the sculpture of the top view of the roof, but while you're here, if you're here this weekend and can go to the museum and to see the soil exhibition that's in the rotunda right now, there is a really lovely model that is a small 3D model that shows just really how elegant this very complicated roof form is when you're looking at it from the top down. And along with the Nordique as the design assist partner for the timber structure, we're also working with the firm Zahner, who's the roofing manufacturer, in a similar process, informing the design and engineering of the roof. And it includes snow analysis and water, anticipated rainfalls and how the water will shed from the roof. Water from the roof will be captured in a rain harvesting system that's very complex and part of the sustainability project, sustainability measures for the project. So it's being studied, and it's being studied by consultants, both from the architectural and engineering firms, and then also by consultants that the college has hired as checks and balances for that. So there's a lot of effort being studied. And yeah, in addition to Nordique, who's the design assist partner for the structure, we're working with Zahner on the roof and a company called Roshman for the curtain wall glass. So these are all early partners that have been working with the design team.
Thank you. A comment and then a question. Going back to the outdoor sculpture question, as a member of the great class of '75, I just wonder if you have considered the work of our classmate Walter Mattia, who's just a wonderful sculptor and deserves some consideration. My question is, how are your neighbors in the town hall and the police department taking all this? And in the bigger question, how does this relate to the larger Williamstown community?
Do you want to talk about the town hall, and I'll talk about the community?
Sure. So we have worked in, I work in the Office of Planning, Design, and Construction, and with a partner, Scott Henderson, who's been an architect and project manager here for several years, has a very, very good relationship with the town, and especially with our code building officer, Ryan Contenta, who has been a part of our drawing reviews all along the way, and yeah, very helpful and encouraging. And we are working also with the town on, right now in our early phase of construction, improving their utilities and understanding their needs for access around the site, and that's about some work that we're about to undertake to help them in the process. So we are maintaining a really good relationship with the town, and based on good previous working history also.
And then as far as the relationship with the community in an ongoing way goes, this is one of the most exciting things about this project. The new location will be much more visible and it will be much more accessible. There will be parking. There will be more spaces for gathering. And it's really important that WCMA is free and open to the public. It's one of the places on campus where you can really come as a visitor and see the liberal arts mission in practice. And you can see the incredible power of learning with art throughout the various spaces. So I feel like this new next century of WCMA is really going to be a time when we are able to more fully engage. There have been at different times in WCMA's history K-12 programs and more family programs. And with the new site and the new facilities, I think we'll be able to engage Williams students in teaching those K-12 groups, leading family programs, and they're very interested in kind of being the representatives of this museum to the community. I just think it's a really important aspect of the educational mission and the whole experience of the museum to fully embrace the power of bringing the campus community and the broader public community together. I just think there's so much that can happen with that chemistry. So that's one of the things we're most excited about. The cafe also, I did mention that the north views of the former Williams Inn were beloved by some people, and we've tried to nod to those with those two north-facing windows in the furthermost north galleries. Another part of the Williams Inn that people are missing is the restaurant at the inn, just as a place to get together and have coffee with friends. So the cafe at the museum will be a really wonderful community addition in that way too. And of course we have a really active public program, and we'll now have a state-of-the-art auditorium as well as the various spaces throughout the museum to present those programs. So I think all together that means that we're just going to be ever more a resource for the community and truly even more of a partner to the other museums in this incredible arts ecosystem, because we'll have just more space and better accessibility for all of that.
There are a couple of questions up front that
Could you say a little bit about how you address the challenges of heating and cooling a building with very high ceilings and with lots of glass?
So we'll both weigh in on this, I think. We're using air source heat pumps. The sustainability certification requires that our building use 70% less energy than like buildings in like climates. And so we did that benchmarking. Part of the strategy is that deep roof overhang of the porch, which does kind of moderate how much light comes through the glass and helps modify the conditions. State-of-the-art HVAC systems.
and very spaces very tailored to the environmental needs. So we're applying the museum preservation conditions with humidity control only to the galleries and only to the art storage locations, and not to the lobby, which the lobby will have art in it, but it won't have sensitive works on paper or photographs that require a more stringent conservation environment. So being really specific about where those more energy intensive needs are. And then also with the Design Assist partners, a very specific focus in the envelope and how these firms are making connections in between the products to keep a very tight envelope. The sustainability or the energy usage for the new museum will be 70% below a comparable museum that would have been built in 1991. So it's meeting a really high standard for low energy through a lot of these different targeted ways.
The Association of Art Museum Directors has just endorsed a sustainability certification kind of, or protocol, a sustainability protocol called the Bezo Green Protocol. And the kinds of customization of climate and condition for specific space uses is part of that. And I bring it up because it's actually for our students who want to go into the museum world, it's really important for them to be able to learn what the kind of most forward-looking climate approaches that art museums are embracing, and this new building is going to let us do that really better than almost any other teaching museum out there. So it's going to prepare them well for thinking about how art museums can be more sustainable going forward and sort of continue to lead the way on that.
You mentioned the glass a few times. What are you doing to prevent bird strikes?
The glass, I will note there is a bird frit protection on all of the glass. These are very large, expansive glass lights that in some cases are 15 feet tall. And every glass surface is going to have this integrated glass frit. We evaluated the aesthetic between 3 different options on the mock-up also, and have narrowed down one that is it's kind of a UV. It's not an applied vinyl dot that you see sometimes. It's a integrated UV coating on the glass and is meeting a threat factor. That's how that is measured, a very, very low threat factor that is based on like New York City guidelines. It's even more advanced than that. So it will be present on all the glass. Yeah.
And our aesthetic choice was actually the most safe for birds too. So it was a really happy coincidence in that case. Well, thank you all for your questions. This is really, really helpful.
Thank you.